Lately, I've been asking myself the question, after 5 years of doing this particular radio show, is it time for a change?
It's your weekend show with Bob Biermann.
And here's the reason that I'm thinking that way. 5 years of doing a solo, for the most part, radio show. Yeah, there have been occasional guests along the way. But after 5 years of doing this program, is it making a difference like it once did? Is it being heard by the audience that it once had? When the program started way back in March of 2015, hard to believe we've been doing this program for over 5 years. It was aired on International Shortwave through the facilities of WRMI in Okeechobee. And at that time, especially in the first year, it had a number of airings over the weekend on a number of substantial frequencies. And the program started to get a bit of an audience. About a year later, when I spent more time working with WRMI, I had the opportunity for even additional airings on the weekend on a number of frequencies. And it stayed that way for quite a while. And I would hear reports from Germany, the United Kingdom, France, Belgium, all over the United States and Canada, and even occasionally from Japan, even the Netherlands and Sweden. But over time, the number of airings started to go down a bit because this is a program that is not actually sustaining on its own merits to be able to afford the time. And so the number of airings started to decline to just a handful on one or two frequencies. And so the number of replies that I get back on this program has gone down significantly over the past 18 months. And it makes me wonder, should I continue doing this program in the way that I've been doing it? Starting about a year or so ago, I began to think more in terms of those that listen to the program online. Now, for a long time, from the very beginning, you could hear the show, if you wanted to, from the website. Now, I never had any way in particular to know how many people listened or downloaded the program. It was there, plus old episodes, as a convenience. Then I was introduced to other avenues, such as Spreaker, where the program has been on, SoundCloud. And so I added Spreaker and SoundCloud as a way to hear the program as well. And it picked up a few listeners. And also, believe it or not, the audio of this program has been generally available each week for a number of years on YouTube. And there's some people that listen on a regular basis, via YouTube. But all in all, the number of people listening to the program online was not that significant. Well, last summer, I decided to up the game in terms of putting it online like a podcast. Now, this program is not exactly structured for being a podcast in and of its own right. It's more structured to be a radio program. Yet a number of people take the time to listen to this 1 hour program, generally just featuring me talking about the things that are on my heart and my mind and things that I see, observe, some music that I share from time to time. One of the most listened to programs was last summer, the summer of 1969, and its music through the eyes of a teenager. In terms of the online version of the program, was the most listened to Your Weekend show online to this day. I mean, it was shared by a lot of folk. And it showed me that in terms of radio, it seemed to people listen to that program because of the music. But I can't always be doing a music radio show. So where is the future of this program going? I have noticed outside of that one special episode that was just skyrocketed, that overall listenership as a podcast from sites like Anchor, from, Apple Podcast and other sites is gradually growing each and every week. But the format of this program is generally more toward being a radio program. So how do I balance the two? These are the things that I've been wrestling with for a number of months. And prior to, let's say, February of this year, I was thinking about what I could do with the show come this summer. Then we had the pandemic. And that changed a whole lot of things in a big hurry. Believe me on that. Those that have listened to this program on a regular basis know that at one time in my life, I worked for a significant number of years away from broadcast, away from my ministry work in emergency management. I originally came on board with an agency as a guy that could deal with public information and media. But over time, I discovered I had some talents, and they did too, in terms of planning. So I did a lot of training and certification. And so I got pretty good at my craft. And back at the beginning of the pandemic, I was asked to come out of my retirement and work for a county of about 289,000 people in their response. And I think that the work that we did, especially in the early days when I got there, really did make a difference in how that community has fared. To be honest, they predicted 1,000, 2,000 or more deaths by the middle to end of May. And as of about a few days ago, last that I checked, 4 people passed away in that county. Not 1,000, not 2,000, not 3,000. 4 people, all over the age of 78, and all having severe underlying other health issues. It doesn't make their death any less important. But our strategy from day one was to protect the vulnerable in the nursing homes. And that's where the effort went. And also to find places to put people that would be at risk if there was an outbreak. And we used those places. We stepped up what would be overflow hospital beds we never needed. To look at how that county did compared to the rest of the nation, I give them credit. And a lot of places that I've seen around the country have had equal or similar results. I learned a lot during that period of time. Those 5 weeks that I was away from my family and actually recording this program in a hotel room, normally about a week before it had to air, I would record the program on the Sunday afternoon the week before the program would air because I was just so busy during the week. But it was during that time I started thinking about the direction the program would go. And it was the incident of dealing with this pandemic that started me thinking a little differently. No one person can be an expert on all things. I'm good at the things that I do, like you are the things that you are called to do. All of us have got talents, and we all have different insights. And I've truly enjoyed doing this program and sharing from my heart with you. And in many ways, I'm going to continue to do that. But the way this program has been done for the past 5 years is going to change beginning next week. And it will gradually morph into more of what I originally had wanted the show to be in 2015. I wanted the program to be more of a magazine format. In other words, not just one long topic for the entire program, but to break it up into 2, 3, or 4 segments. Nice, easy to deal with bite-sized segments of interest. But not just me. See, when I first started with that concept, for me to delve into 4 different topics to produce into a radio show became, well, not easy. It was time-consuming. I have the time to deal with maybe one topic, maybe occasionally 2, but to try to get into too many areas, especially if it's an area where I don't feel the comfort level of my expertise in sharing with you. I need other people to help. And so I've been praying about this literally. I've had nights where I wake up saying, should I even continue to do the program? My wife has encouraged me in no uncertain terms that I really need to do this program. I need this outlet. I need to use the program, but I need to grow the program in a different way. Now, will the show stay on shortwave as long as the doors are open? And I may try to seek a little extra funding or advertising to find ways of getting it on other radio stations and international shortwave stations. Maybe the time has come to make a little format adjustment in the way the program is tied together and make it palatable to news talk stations, to radio stations looking for something different to fill some time on a weekend. And also put together a special version, an hour long, like this program roughly is, for more than just WRMI and the Voice of Hope out of Zambia. Maybe other shortwave stations should consider taking this program. Maybe I can work something out to get this program. There are a couple of stations that I would love to be on in this country right now. And I think it would be a benefit to the station and this program. So you're asking yourself, what are you thinking about doing going forward on your weekend show? And how are you going to do this weekend show? Well, here's what I have in mind. I'm going to do a few things that I may not have as much opportunity to do. I'm sure I will, but I won't have as much opportunity to do in the days and weeks and months ahead, especially in the area of music. I may not have as much time. But I thought I would share a few musical numbers on this program to kind of remind us where this program has been and maybe set the stage for where this program is going. This is your weekend show.
On the air and online at yourweekendshow.com with Bob Biermann.
Morning, girl. How'd you sleep last night? You're several ages older now. Your eyes have started showing how the little girl's growing now. Morning, girl. Was that you last night, crying on the radio, begging for a way to go back where love wasn't jumbled so? Oh no, things are different now than they were before. You know love is more than kissing, a whole lot more. Morning, girl. Put your dreams away and read your box of Cheerios and powder puff that pretty nose and go out and find your man where the wild wind blows. Morning, girl.
Your Weekend Show with Bob Biermann.
One of those songs from 1969, a lot of you that may have been around back then may have long ago forgotten. One of the things about having spent a part of my life, a good part of it, as a disc jockey and as a young guy who listened to a lot of radio, I got to know a lot of the music and songs, and especially when I got on the air in the very early 1970s. There was a time I could probably, if anybody remembers the TV show Name That Tune, I probably could name that tune in 2 notes half the time. But it's what I did for a good part of my life. Today, stations that play music from the 60s and the 70s, they tend to play a lot of the same, what they consider tested songs over and over and over again. And somehow some of those songs that bring back some great memories, like the Neon Philharmonic and their rendition of the song done by the Letterman, Morning Girl, get forgotten. And they fall into the cracks in the mist of time. That's one of the things I have enjoyed doing on occasion with this program. And I think that there'll be times that I get to do it in the future. So where is this program going today? Well, we're going to have a few songs along the way of forgotten memories. I'm going to kind of take you through my high school years. That song came out about the time I was finishing my freshman year in high school. And I'll take you to my junior year and my sophomore year, my senior year in just a few minutes. And bring back a song, if you're in my general age bracket, you may have forgotten, but you'll remember immediately within the first, shall we say, 2 or 3 notes. One of the issues in doing this program has been a combination of time for research and production and getting it distributed, and other things that are also putting demands on my time. You'd think that being retired like I'm supposed to be, I would have all the time in the world. But funny, I think I'm busier now than I was before I retired. I planned on retiring early for a long time, and it actually was able to happen. And since the day that I officially retired, I think I work more. But I mostly spend my time doing things that I'm really led and called to do. I spend more time in preaching and teaching. That's part of my life. I've been in ministry for almost 25 years next year. That came later in life when I was in my early 40s. I've had time to do this radio show. I have had time to develop the first of what will be 3 or 4 different streaming radio stations. And I've been trying to find the time to develop strategies to help local church congregations be able to use the technology out there without embarrassing themselves, which, how do I say this politely, and I don't want anybody to be offended. The coronavirus, COVID-19, whatever you want to call it, SARS-CoV-2, took a lot of us by surprise. Suddenly our churches were closed. And how many churches do you know that never thought, this could never happen to us? I mean, if you're in Minnesota, you occasionally, get knocked out every once in a blue moon by a snowstorm. But you're not shut down for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 2 months, or longer. A lot of churches that I can think of right now may not even survive this being closed that long. They were marginal and small to begin with. And sadly, this may do them in. And a lot of churches were desperate to do something, and they would send 1 or 2 people over to a church building or somewhere, and they would try to use a cell phone and use Facebook Live and try to and try to keep connected to their congregation. I applaud what they did, and I listened to and viewed a number of people that I knew, and I felt, wow, they should have thought about these kind of things years ago. And I've told this in my ministry to churches. Look for ways to make your work go far beyond the four walls of your building. If you are inwardly focused and only thinking about your budget and building, you're going to have a hard time ever growing. You need external ministry, or the church you have will have a very minimal impact on your community. And I'd said many a time, not knowing this would ever come along, that it doesn't take a whole lot of change in a negative way to take down your church. Now, I never conceived of anything like this. I'm thinking maybe, some elderly members pass away and they're not replaced by somebody new. And if you're not even known in your community, let me put it this way. People have, even good Christian people have what I call a church phobia, new church phobia. You come to a new town and you're looking for a church, but you're kind of afraid to go in the front door. You don't know what you're going to run into. Maybe it's a cliquish church. They're all family members or something. I had an experience. I'm not going to say where. I don't want to embarrass anybody. But I went to visit a church where I actually knew the guy that was the pastor. I hadn't seen him in about 7 or 8 years. It was, a few years after my first wife passed away. So this has got to be probably around 2006 or 7, somewhere in there. They had built this beautiful church building. It is a church that I had been asked to consider being the pastor, but I had declined back in the 90s because, to be blunt, at the time there was just a handful of wealthy families running the show. And if anybody knows me, I'm not a yes man to nobody. I just don't work that way. If God calls me to do something, you're not going to change my mind if I am absolutely having full certainty. And so I felt that it would not be a good fit. And they had this big budget to build this beautiful building with stained glass windows. All it needs is a moat to go around and look like a castle. And so I come there on this beautiful Sunday morning. And this church that could seat a lot of folk had only a few people in it. And now this is Florida. This is the height of season. The church that I had on the other coast of Florida about 4 or 5 years before was packed for 2 services. This just had 1 service. And so I'm sitting in this pew. About midway up, there's only a handful of people in here, and this older gentleman comes up and says, "This is where I normally sit," so I had to move. Nobody greeted me or anything. And that church, people know the building, but they know nothing about the church. Their website doesn't tell you much. Maybe your church is a good and solid church with a excellent message and wonderful people. But does your community know that? And if you were to do something like a Facebook Live, would it look like Ted Mack's Amateur Hour with, or even worse yet, Showtime at the Apollo with the hook coming out of the side to pull you off stage? Why is it Christians have a hard time putting our best foot forward and doing our best for the Lord? We're always trying to find a cheap way to do something without spending anything, without investing in anything, and sometimes without even taking the time to learn what we're doing. And that's one of the ministries that I dearly want to get involved with, is to help congregations that obviously have the right message and people. They just don't know how to get the word out. And I'm going to be putting together a ministry called Ancient Word Media to help people have a platform. Look, Facebook is not Christian-friendly anymore. It is not conservative-friendly at all. And if anybody says that it is, they're a fool. I mean, this radio show's Facebook posting for last week's program, I was going to actually spend a little money to promote it, but saying some of the things that I was saying, my title for last week's program, Are You Essential or Non-Essential and Who Makes the Choice, was considered hate speech or unacceptable or something. Didn't meet community standards. Go figure. So if your church is relying heavily on Facebook Live or YouTube, another one that is getting increasingly locked downish on things of faith, Dennis Prager, a radio show host, has some incredibly good videos from what's called PragerU. There's nothing filthy, dirty, there's nothing racist, there's nothing whatever about anything that he does. It's pure common sense and logic. Yet he is minimized and put in a Facebook ghetto, and he's tossed off YouTube. I can think of others. And shows like this, if I'm dependent upon Facebook and those kind of entities, they're going to be in trouble. And so will churches if they try to depend on these services. So I need to create some time to work on those other projects. So what do I have in mind? Well, the original idea of the program was a magazine format. I told you that in the first segment. And we are going to gradually gravitate back to that magazine format and make this program a showcase of ideas. And there are a few friends that I realized the other day, it was so strange. I woke up in the middle of the night. I'd gone to bed thinking about this, and I just had no answer. And I woke up at 3 in the morning, and I just felt this voice telling me, put 3 names in my head of people that I know. And I felt the need to reach out to these 3 people. One of those individuals currently does a very popular podcast. 2 others are people that should be doing a podcast because they are immensely talented, but they're not in a position to start one. So your weekend show is going to be a mixture of me and various other contributors as we put together a program that'll be specifically designed for radio, ultimately for commercial and non-commercial radio stations in the United States and elsewhere, and of course, hopefully even more so for international shortwave. It will be similar, but I think it's going to have more substance. And this will allow me to spend a good amount of time researching a specific topic to run in a specific segment with guests if needed, and instead of trying to fill an hour, just do the topic and have others do their topic. And something tells me that, well, number one, in the podcast world, there is no program that is kind of a magazine format that I'm aware of. Maybe there is, but I have not found it. And I don't think even on radio there's a magazine format that'll be like the one that I feel led to do. I think the program is going to be even more entertaining and a lot more fun to listen to. And we'll get more things done and said. And it allows me to launch a short, more frequent podcast that you can pick up during the week, as well as the other individuals as they launch their once a week or so podcast as well. They don't have to worry about it being too long or too short. Just cover the topic and be done. Then we take the best of all this material, and it becomes a radio show and kind of a summary podcast for the week. I'd like to know what your thoughts are on the direction this program is going. Right now, I want to take you to the end of my sophomore year, and I want you to imagine this youngster getting ready to head to his junior year of high school.
On the air and online at yourweekendshow.com with Bob Biermann.
From the golden year 1970, as we would say back in the day as a disc jockey, free to pain, and all that's left is a band of gold. We are going to take a brief break and be right back. This is your weekend show.
Well, hello again, all you fervent and passionate misfits out there who are listening in today on Ancient Word Radio. This is Father Richard Jones from the Uprising Anglican Mission in Tulsa, Oklahoma. In this segment, I want to talk about what it means to be more like Christ. Did you know that only once in the New Testament was the term Christian used to describe the followers of Christ? Peter made use of that term in his first epistle. He most likely used it because it was a term being expressed by those outside the church to describe those who followed Jesus and his teachings. The fact that the term was first applied to the disciples by outsiders is in itself quite suggestive. Why did the people of Antioch call these people Christians? There's only one answer that can be logically arrived at. It is a simple answer, yet it encompasses the entire dynamic. They saw that these people had been with Christ. They had been with him in spirit, if not in actual person, and they had learned of him. They talked of Christ, lived for Christ, worked for Christ, and died for Christ. They had caught his spirit and were manifesting him in character and conduct. Therefore, the people of Antioch said, "These people are Christians," a peculiar people who are like him. Do people today say the same thing of us for the very same reasons they did in Antioch? Do they witness Christ's character and conduct in us? Are we manifesting him and the hope he brings to the wounded and hurting in our own generation? Or have we turned the term Christian into a reproach against ourselves and against Christ? Because while we might call ourselves his disciples, our conduct and character look nothing like his? St. Luke said in Acts 4:13, "Now when they saw the boldness of Peter and John, and perceived that they were unlearned and ignorant men, they marveled, and they took knowledge of them, that they had been with Jesus." Well, Misfits, that's all for now. And until next time, this is Father Richard saying, the Lord be with you.
It's your weekend show with Bob Biermann.
And welcome back to part 2 of your weekend show. I'm your host, Bob Biermann. So glad that, as I've said for the past, 5 years, I'm so glad you're spending part of it with me. This program is a little different, as you may have already known if you've been with us from the beginning. I have been talking a little bit on and off for at least 6 or 7 months about what the future of this radio program should be. I've asked the question, should it remain on shortwave? And in spite of the fact I don't have as many airings as I once had, I still have those that do listen, and we're going to keep something going for you. But I believe the time has come to make a directional change in the program, structurally anyway. As I've said before, doing a program of this nature takes several hours just of me editing, thinking, trying to find material. It's a lot of work. Then I have to distribute the program, and I have to keep the website up. There's just a lot that goes with it. And I enjoy doing it, don't get me wrong. But I've been having this thought process. Maybe it's time to not be so much just me. I know so many people that have a wonderful voice and things that need to be said, but they don't have an outlet. I want to turn this program into an outlet for some people that literally I believe God has put in my pathway over the years. I mean, I'm serious. These are people, some I've known for 4, 5, 6 years, 7 years, people that for whatever reason came across my pathway. And we developed friendships. And they have so much to offer. But they've run into that, what you call the glass ceiling, the brick wall, whatever. They just can't seem to be heard. And here I have a program that is being heard and could be heard by more, because I'm in the position to at least get it distributed and maybe even marketed, and maybe even more stations, AM, FM, radio stations in the United States on a weekend. I've wanted to do a short-form podcast, maybe 1 or 2 times a week, because something important happened today. And I want to take a little time to address it, maybe even talk to somebody about it, and you would be notified that I've got an updated podcast, and then take the best of some of the stuff I'm doing and others and put it together as a radio program and tie it all together, and also as a very unique magazine-formatted podcast. I just don't think anybody's doing that. I feel very comfortable in moving in this direction because it's become, more difficult. It's hard to sustain a program, especially when the airings on shortwave have been reduced. And I really need to find other outlets on shortwave, and also, equally as important, domestic radio, where it's available. And the other people that I'm talking to help them get their podcast going. One person already has a well-established podcast. And for him to be a contributor with this project would be beneficial to all of us, even more so to what I'm trying to put together. And the two other voices you'll be hearing, I think you're going to enjoy them. They're excellent people. They have a lot to say, and I think all of us together, I think this is a project that, I've thought about doing something like this, but it never came together until we've gone through this pandemic. And our world has absolutely changed. I don't think some people will ever be the same. And I want to share a few thoughts about this pandemic and what makes me just go crazy when I look at some of the things on the news, some of the things people think and do. And most important, it goes right back to the first program I ever did addressing this pandemic before it really hit, to fear not. Now we've got people that claim the name of Christ that are living in abject fear, just afraid of everything. They wear a mask to keep safe. It's more like they're wearing it to be in submission. There's a lot that I learned that a lot of people do not know who just watch the news or look at Facebook or whatever. Having worked in emergency management, you get a different understanding of the numbers. And if you really are intellectually honest with yourself, look over everything ever said by the experts going all the way back to December, that the coronavirus was not even transmissible from human to human. That it's all, we were lied to about what happened in China. The WHO tried to cover. We can go on and on. I'm not going to get into all the politics. I don't need to. If you have any common sense, you'll understand what I'm saying. The Imperial College ran their intensive computer study, and we did everything we did in this nation based on that model and another one that was about as bad in terms of what they predicted, and also equally as bad in being thoroughly inaccurate. Put away your blinders and rose-colored glasses for just a moment. How many remember, you probably forgot, that we have to flatten the curve, flatten the curve, flatten the curve. Millions upon millions are going to die. 2 million, 1 million, one estimate 10 million in the United States. And everybody proceeded with panic because of the assumed mortality rate based on what ended up being garbage. A garbage computer program that every time they ran it came out with completely different numbers. People that analyzed the code when they finally found it on GitHub, of all places, said it was just gibberish. And the world did all that we've done based upon garbage. Now, am I saying the virus is not contagious, that it can cause harm, that it can be a difficult ride? I'm not saying that at all. My wife's daughter had it about 3.5 weeks ago. She came down with it. And she went through a few days that were a little bit difficult, a little hard to breathe, low-grade fever, upset stomach. She's back at work. She's fine. Which is pretty much what happens with the vast majority, like in the 99% bracket and higher. We were given numbers, and here's something else. I want to give you some, just use your common sense and 5th grade math. I think even 3rd grade math will work. people say, well, the cases are going to spike if we do this, that, or the other. No, they're not. Go back a few months ago, we had very little testing in this country, and we only tested the sickest of the sick. I mean, if you presented yourself to most places for testing and they were all wearing their little hazmat suits, unless you were really sick with a fever, they sent you on your way. You weren't even tested. You may have had it, we just never knew it. When you're testing 5,000 a day or 10,000 a day, hard to figure how many people. When you get to 30,000 a day, the numbers kept climbing. We're testing like 300,000 people or more a day, and it won't be long till we're over 400,000 people. And truthfully, the number per 1,000 people is technically going down. Oh, we have more confirmed cases. We don't assume the cases. The confirmed cases are tested cases. But for months, we couldn't really test. And some of the tests were inaccurate. And now we're learning from antigen studies. Guess what? A lot more people have already had this than we ever knew. Symptoms may have not been that bad, or people just wrote it out and thought it was the flu or something else. So testing more may give you some more cases, but here's something that's happening. It's not spiking the death rate. By comparison, it keeps going down, down, down. The more confirmed cases, because we can test more, the mortality rate that was once 6%, then went to 4%, then to 3%, then to maybe 2 or 1, is now way under 1%. Let me give you some other numbers to digest for just a moment. And I saw this, and at first I was almost surprised, and I said, I don't really believe this. Maybe it's true. So I did what I normally do when I see something that's too good to believe, though it might be true. You double check. So here goes. If you look at a map of the United States, and you find New York City and Long Island, which includes Nassau and Suffolk County, and the borough of Queens and Brooklyn, and you take Staten Island and the Bronx and Manhattan, you have about 11 million people. Okay, now remember, the United States is around 330 million people, so 11 million people. 1/3 of all of the cases and deaths from COVID-19 occurred in Long Island, Manhattan, Staten Island, the Bronx. 1/3 of all the cases. We also know that they estimate that maybe upwards of 25% of what they call COVID-19 deaths may not be, and that comes from Dr. Birx herself. So let's just stay with the original number of around, we'll just round it off to 100,000 people, over 30,000 of which are in one area, and a number of the nursing home ones could have been avoided. We'll talk about that some other day. Now, let's look at another part of the United States. Now, look at your map again, and look for Chicago and Detroit. Together they make about, somewhere, if you look at the entire Chicago region, and it's probably not as much of a region in terms of what I'm trying to do, but I'll give the benefit of the doubt. You take them together, you got a little over 10 or 11 million. Add the entire state of New Jersey, now you're at 19 million. Add Connecticut, you're at 22 million. And maybe when you add Massachusetts, you're at 28 million, and even part of far eastern Pennsylvania. You're under 10% of the entire United States population in those areas. And that's where 1/3, did you hear me? 1/3 of all the cases of COVID-19 occurred. Now remember, 1/3 occurred in Long Island and New York City, and 1/3 occurred in the other areas just mentioned. Total population of the region is a little bit over 11 or 12% of the country, and 2/3 of all COVID-19 cases occurred in approximately 12% of the population of this country. Does that not tell you something? Think about that. Only 1/3 of the cases, and we are already learning that the numbers may be higher than anticipated in terms of deaths, comorbidity, miscounting, or assuming. There are a lot of reasons. I'm not going to get into them. We'll just stay with the numbers as they are. But all of the state of California, the biggest state in the country, Texas, Florida's got 23 million people in it, bigger than New York State. 1/3 of the cases are in every place else in the United States, among 290 million people. Do you see where the panic has gotten a bit out of hand? We'll talk about that maybe again next weekend. I have some people that'll be some guests. By the way, let's go to the end of my junior year, 1971.
On the air and online at yourweekendshow.com with Bob Biermann.
He had white horses and ladies by the score, all dressed in satin and waiting by the door. Ooh, what a lucky man he was. Ooh, what a lucky man he was. White lace and feathers, they made up his bed. A gold-covered mattress on which he was led. Ooh, what a lucky man he was. Ooh, what a lucky man he was. He went to fight wars for his country and his king, of his honor and his glory. The people would sing. Ooh, what a lucky man he was. Ooh, what a lucky man he was. A bullet had found him. His blood ran as he cried. No money could save him, so he lay down and he died. Ooh, what a lucky man he was. Ooh, what a lucky man he was.
Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Remember that song? I do. 1971. Just as I was getting into radio. Lucky man. These past 5 years, doing a solo radio program with just a few guests from time to time. has been an honor. It's been a joy. It's been a lot of fun. But after 5 years and the direction the world is going, you need more than just my voice. And there's so many things that I need to be doing besides this radio show. I don't make any money out of doing this. It takes a lot of my time. I'm glad to do it. But I've been really thinking about, do I continue or do I make some changes? And I've decided to, start introducing you to some additional people that'll be a part of your weekend show going forward. I'll still be here each and every week, but I think some of the insight that some of these people I know is going to be wonderful, and I think it's going to enhance the program. It allows me to also do a few more things during the week for those that would like to pick up a short podcast and help the other podcasts grow as well. It's been fun doing a show like this, and occasionally we will come back and do a solo show, maybe with some music. I want to go back to a forgotten song from 1972. This I played when I was just starting. I'm working at a commercial radio station, and I remember playing this song, and I bet if you're my age, you were in high school in the early 70s, I bet you forgot this song. The Adrisi Brothers.
Never talked. There was a time when there weren't enough words to say. We never touched, but I remember when I couldn't keep my hands away. The thrill is gone, there's no desire. Girl, we've got to feed the fire. We've got to get it on again. Work it out together. Learn to love again. To make a try. Hey girl, we've got to get it on again. Get our act together. Fall in love again. To keep our love alive. We never laughed. We used to know so many happy songs. We never kissed in the penetrating way that used to turn me on. Once there was fire in our lives, silver sparks that used to fly. We've got to get it on again. Work it out together. Learn to love again. We've got to make a try. Hey girl, we've got to get it on again. Get our act together. To keep our love alive. Once there was fire in our lives, silver sparks that used to fly. We've got to get it on again. Work it out together. Learn to love again. We've got to make a try. Hey girl, we've got to get it on again.
I can't believe the time has come and gone as fast as it has. Be back next weekend as we begin to premiere some added features, and I think things you're going to enjoy on your weekend show. Don't forget the website, theweekendshow.com, yourweekendshow.com. See you next week.
On the air and online at yourweekendshow.com with Bob Biermann.